Leaked video just came out of governing body member Mark Sanderson giving a speech in Chile, basically begging men in the organization to step up and take positions of leadership, revealing a disastrous downward trend they're failing miserably to combat in 2026. Sanderson also claims Jehovah's Witnesses are fighting for their religious freedom in Norway, simultaneously milking their persecution complex while telling bold-faced lies about their ongoing legal troubles.
A trial that we face today is having enough workers to look after the congregations of Jehovah's people and to care for all of the preaching work that needs to be accomplished around the world. There is a constant need for more elders. We also need more pioneers. We need more missionaries. We need more circuit overseers. We need more Bethelites. We need more ministerial servants. We need more construction volunteers.
Yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses are facing a little something we call a retention problem. According to a study by the Pew Research Center in 2016, 2/3 of Jehovah's Witnesses eventually leave. And as one of those included in that statistic, I can tell you that this is due to a number of factors. One, being a Jehovah's Witness sucks. It's overly puritanical, outdated, and all-consuming. Right? This isn't just going to church on Sunday. They want your blood. Two, they love to play God and kick people out. Thousands are disfellowshipped or removed from the Jehovah's Witnesses every year. But this has backfired spectacularly, with those same people staying out instead of trying to get reinstated back into the congregation. So consequently, they're reducing your prison sentence or just plain chasing you down to get you to come back so they can beef up their rapidly dwindling numbers. And three, anyone with a pulse and an internet connection can research the organization now and realize they're in a cult. People are waking up and leaving. So yeah, the leaders are getting desperate. But specifically, Sanderson goes on to talk about how desperate the organization is getting for more men to pick up the mantle and serve in positions of leadership. All right, they need more elders. They need more circuit overseers, these high-ranking positions, people to lead the congregation. And what I find funny about this is that women are not allowed to have any kind of leadership role. And there's so many Jehovah's Witness women. I just find it funny. If they let that happen, their problems would be solved. But of course, hell will freeze over before they ever put a woman in charge. But yeah, it is bad, guys. It's so bad that Sanderson is pressuring young boys and men, which, by the way, he says young boys and men far too often for my liking. He's pressuring young boys and teenagers to start thinking now about leading the congregation. Like soon, like by the time they graduate high school. Listen to this.
If a baptized brother in his early teens or even younger is exemplary, he's good in his personal study habits, in commenting regularly at the meetings, and having a regular share in the ministry. He may be given assignments that are appropriate for his age and circumstances. Well, now, do you get the point? It's saying that young brothers, those who are baptized, and later we've added even those who are unbaptized, they can be given assignments in the congregation that are appropriate to their age. We're getting these young ones, these young boys and teenagers involved in the work. And what can this lead to? Well, here's what the guidance went on to say. When young brothers are given assignments in the congregation, they can be tested as to fitness to shoulder responsibility, and they may qualify as ministerial servants when they reach their late teens. Now, isn't that wonderful that young brothers can become ministerial servants when they're 18 years of age? Well, now, what about now these ministerial servants? The direction went on to say this. An exceptional ministerial servant who has gained experience in shepherding and teaching may even be appointed as an elder at the age of 21. Well, now, isn't that great?
¿No les parece maravilloso?
Wonderful.
Espectacular.
Wonderful. Are you reaching out to become an elder? Go and speak to your elders. Ask them what you need to do in order to qualify, because we want you young brothers to serve as elders.
Yeah, that whole outdated thing I mentioned earlier, there's a little something called social media. And the next generation of men were weaned on it. All right? They know they're in a dying cult. They're strategizing. They're not making any major commitments. But also, the problem is, besides all the obvious of, social media, kids having smartphones, access to information, and I know this from personal experience, something that really, really bothers me is that, unfortunately, this will be effective on at least a percentage of young men in the organization, because guys like Sanderson, this nexus or this network of older men in the organization, the governing body, elders, circuit overseers, guys like this, they prey on vulnerable young men who are fatherless or who live in impoverished countries, without access to information or education or financial opportunity. So what happens? The organization swoops in and fills that void. I mean, if you go back and listen to what he's talking about, he's saying baptized brothers, but he's also saying unbaptized brothers, could be qualified to take up these assignments and start, helping out, taking the lead in the congregation. Let me give you a little perspective. This is a kid who hasn't even made an official dedication to the organization. He's unbaptized, and they're trying to lock him in. See what I'm saying? So, if they see a young man who's young, hungry, and impressionable, you've created an environment ripe for exploitation. Again, I saw this in my own experience when I was growing up in the organization. I saw it happen to my guy friends, young guys in my congregation. And it keeps going, by the way. The legacy. What happens is they get some power and clout. They rise the ranks very quickly. He gets really high off of the attention. It makes sense. He gets high off of the attention that he didn't get from his father or at the office or in doing something that would bring him personal satisfaction or attention, like a hobby, a sport, something like that. And then he gets married, becomes a controlling husband, has kids, and the cycle continues. Round and round we go. These positions that Sanderson is talking about are not appropriate for a young guy 21 or under. You do not have the appropriate life experience to govern a congregation, dole out any kind of marital counseling, and you especially don't have the wisdom at 21 to weigh in on a judicial committee. Let's say you're asked to sit on a committee whether or not you're going to remove or disfellowship a person from the congregation. Putting you in a position where there is the potential for you to split someone up from their family and ruin their life. These men, no matter what their age is, they don't receive any real pastoral training. All right, Jehovah's Witnesses don't know what they're doing. They're in la-la land. They're not counselors. They're not therapists. They didn't go to any kind of theological school, any seminary. You're playing with fire. You're handing the matches to a 21-year-old. But if you can believe it or not, it gets even worse.
Well, now what about you young elders? Well, here's what the guidance went on to say. If an exceptional young brother was appointed as an elder in his early 20s or mid-20s, he could be approved as a circuit overseer 3 years later. Isn't that fantastic?
Eso sí que es fantástico.
Absolutely wonderful.
Absolutamente espectacular.
So I did a video last year about the Secret Elders Handbook, where I talked about this, the absolute absurdity of appointing a 21-year-old as an elder. Because when you think of an elder, right, okay, the title elder evokes or conjures images of someone who is either, an older gentleman, someone who's a senior, or at least someone who is significantly senior to you, that you would imagine has some life experience under his belt, not someone who he's a single dude trying to live his life, or even maybe he wants to start a family, be a newlywed, and just enjoy his youth, enjoy his marriage. Not some young guy bearing the weight and responsibility of running a congregation. But now on top of that, you got Sanderson talking about promoting guys at 25 years old to be circuit overseers. For those of us who know, circuit overseers were like in their 40s and 50s. This is a high-ranking position. It's one of the highest positions you can have. It means that you oversee dozens of congregations. You travel to each one, you check in, you see who's having problems, and you have to come up with solutions. You have to collaborate with the elder body. I mean, essentially, it's like being a district manager for a major corporation. Again, dealing with really serious issues in the congregation. Matters of adultery, teenagers. You find out teenagers are watching porn when, frankly, he's probably doing the same. As a virile 25-year-old dude, straight or gay, But you got all these circuit overseers now who are reaching their twilight years. The organization is just running into a severe shortage. So, they're basically looking for these young whippersnappers, to step up to the plate, take these leadership positions, and they're hip to the organization. They see the writing on the wall. They're like, nah, I'm good. I'm about to bounce. Absolutely freaking hilarious. The big, fat, tasty chickens have come home to roost. Oh, and here's the thing, millennials, my generation, millennials and Gen X, a lot of them went back out of guilt, feel like they got to do mom and dad proud. Come on, guys, we had MTV. We remember payphones. Some of you had 8-tracks. You knew better. You had your chance and you went back. So anyways, with Gen Z and Alpha coming up, there's, hope for this thing to eventually bleed out. And no, I don't think that Jehovah's Witnesses will ever fully disappear. I mean, my guess is with their multi-billion-dollar facilities up in Ramapo, they're just going to sell off more properties, move increasingly online, and again, just become more and more irrelevant as time goes on and continue, unfortunately, exploiting, like I said, those third world nations who don't have the means to understand the gravity of the organization and what they're involved in. I mean, so yeah, there you go. Again, I find this shortage absolutely hilarious. Dudes, young guys don't want this shit. They want to get laid. They want to have fun. They don't want this burden on their shoulders, at least not that young. I'll even give them this. They live their lives a little bit. They find God. And then at 45, they're like, you know what? This is something that I want to do, that I want to commit myself to. But then also Sanderson gets into Norway. If you're unfamiliar with this, took away Jehovah's Witnesses legal registration in 2022. Then the Jehovah's Witnesses appealed it and won. And now Norway is bringing it all the way to the Supreme Court. We're waiting on a verdict. I'm not going to do a full deep dive here. He's just like, boo-hoo, Norway took away our registration. We had a victory, and then, now they're taking us all the way to the Supreme Court. The brothers are being attacked, making it sound like they're being carpet bombed. Basically, Norway is trying to punish us because we choose to remove unrepentant wrongdoers from the congregation. I mean, here he is jawing about it.
Our brothers in the country of Norway have been attacked.
Ahora, más recientemente, nuestros hermanos en Noruega han recibido ataques también.
In 2022, the government canceled their legal registration.
El año 2022, las autoridades cancelaron nuestro reconocimiento legal en el país.
And for what reason?
¿Y por qué razón?
Well, because we remove unrepentant wrongdoers from the congregation.
Porque sacamos de la congregación a los pecadores que no se arrepienten.
Well, we appealed to the courts to overturn this decision.
Así que se apeló a la corte para que cambiara esta decisión.
But in 2024, the court upheld this decision.
Pero el año 2024, ahora la corte recibió esta apelación también.
And so we appealed to a higher court in Norway.
Así que tuvimos que ir a la corte, una corte más alta ahí en Noruega.
In February of 2025,
en febrero del 2025,
our case was heard for 2 weeks by the Court of Appeal.
Nuestro caso fue atendido durante unas 2 semanas por la Corte de Apelaciones.
And on March 14, 2025,
y en marzo del 2025,
the Court of Appeal unanimously overturned the decision.
Y la Corte de Apelaciones de manera unánime revocó la decisión.
The court concluded that Jehovah's Witnesses have been fully vindicated.
Así es que la Corte permitió que los testigos de Jehová fueran totalmente vindicados.
And they also decided that the government of Norway must pay us more than $800,000 in legal fees.
Y también determinó que el gobierno de Noruega nos pagara casi 800 millones de pesos.
What a great victory for Jehovah's people.
¡Qué tremenda victoria para el pueblo de Jehová!
But the battle is not over yet.
Pero esta batalla todavía no termina.
The government appealed to the Supreme Court of Norway.
Ahora el gobierno apeló a la Corte Suprema de Noruega.
And the hearing was held just a couple of weeks ago.
Y la audiencia fue solo hace un par de semanas atrás.
We are all now waiting for the decision of the Supreme Court.
Así que ahora estamos a la espera de la decisión de la Corte Suprema.
Would you, brothers, please pray on behalf of our dear brothers in Norway? We look to Jehovah and we hope that we will have a great victory again.
Y miramos a
All right, so what this smug waste of space isn't telling the audience is that the whole removing people thing is not why Jehovah's Witnesses are in trouble. They're in trouble because they're violating basic human rights that are outlined in Norway's democratic standards. They are in trouble because they have a shunning mandate that requires you cut ties with the removed person. In case you missed it, they came out with the now infamous article a few years ago that you can say a simple greeting to a disfellowshipped or removed person, so you don't have to treat them like they're completely dead, like they're a ghost, even though that's what they did for decades. They had to soften their position because they lost their legal registration in Norway. But I've talked about this ad nauseum on this channel, that is not the culture of the Jehovah's Witnesses. The culture dictates that you do not speak to that person anymore. You don't have a relationship with them. That it has devastating psychological consequences and has very real negative impact on their life and mental health. All right, so it's like, okay, I don't have my Costco card anymore, so I can't walk into Costco and shop, but I can go with my friend or family member who has a Costco card and shop, and I can still have a relationship with that person who has a Costco card. It's not that they're trying to take away your right to determine who should be removed from the congregation. It's that you're enforcing consequences, telling family members that they can't speak to each other, or telling anyone that they don't have the right to speak to somebody else. You're taking away that person's free will to act by their own conscience. All right, you're committing overreach. That's what they have a problem with. So Sanderson here is just a very manipulative angle, which is very on brand. I don't expect anything else. He's just milking that persecution complex to get the audience all whipped up. Essentially, they're using what they actually refer to it this way, as theocratic warfare in court. It actually reeks of Scientology, because back in the 80s, Scientology was facing an insane tax bill to the tune of several $billion. And their highest officials, in their ranks, just pelted the IRS with lawsuits. They were suing individual IRS employees. So, all these lawsuits were just flooding in. Can you imagine? They're trying to intimidate the IRS into forgiving their tax bill. And the crazy part is they won. They managed to strong-arm the IRS. They were like, all these lawsuits will just go away, in the blink of an eye, if you recognize us as a religion and give us tax-exempt status. So, this isn't new, what the Jehovah's Witnesses are doing. These types of cults and groups do this. They cry persecution when they're the aggressor. They don't care what's happening to these individuals, the devastation to their lives, what's happening to their families. All they care about is keeping their cash. If they can't fight for their reputation and image, they sure as hell are going to fight for their assets. Yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses are screwed, man. And it's a beautiful thing. We don't care that you believe in Jehovah. We don't care that you believe in paradise until you start harming children or shoving your ideology down someone else's throat. And if they don't accept it, you're going to tell them they can't speak to their family. That's where we have a problem. And that's Norway's issue. And, more and more people, including these young men, like I said, are getting hip to it. They want nothing to do with it. You made your bed. So seeing this desperation out of Sanderson is like a tasty chicken wing. Just, the organization is on life support, and it's just going to be funny to see how this plays out. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Hit that like and subscribe button for future content about Jehovah's Witnesses, and I will see you in the next video.